Transmitters and receivers are the backbone to any wireless DMX show. Today, I'm going to introduce you to an affordable way to create a wireless DMX rig. Jerry back with that Theatrically Jerry, and today I want you to meet the 2.4 GHz wireless DMX controller. So this is a pretty simple setup. There's not a whole lot that they include. However, you do get this main unit here. It's rather small. You're also getting a wireless antenna. This is for the 2.4 GHz signal. You're also getting a power adapter because yes, this does in fact need a power supply. And you're also getting a user manual here. And the user manual is kind of boring. It's literally just a folded up piece of paper. However, definitely going to want to keep this because it is going to show you the ID colors that we're going to go over later on in the review. And those are super important when programming wireless DMX. So definitely keep that user manual. This remarkable piece of equipment measures in at 5.78 inches wide by 2.75 inches deep by 1.57 inches high. So super small, compact, can put this in any rig. Great. It weighs a super light 9.26 ounces. And that's thanks to its aluminum alloy body. So this is actually a really robust feeling. I don't feel like I'm going to break it. It's not plastic. So the construction's actually very decent on this. Front of this DMX wireless controller features a easy to read LCD display. To the right here, we have our TXD, which means transmit. And we also have our RXD LED, which means receive. These little LEDs tell you which mode it is in and if it's receiving or transmitting wireless DMX data. The metal PA button is for setting the transmitting power rate. This other button marked ID is for setting the 16 different groups of ID coding. And ID coding allows you to use 16 different controllers without any interference in the same place or venue. So you can use 16 of these boxes without getting any interference. To the extreme right here, we have an on and off toggle switch, and it does feel fairly decent, and it makes a nice audible clicking sound. The back of this controller features a 3-pin DMX in and out. So we have our in here and our out here. DMX out is for transmitting and DMX in is for receiving. There is also a screw on antenna that I showed you earlier, and that's going to screw right here onto this little nub marked ant here. That is for broadcasting of distances up to 400 meters or 1,200 feet. And that's, of course, with a clear line of sight. This distance is going to vary with factors such as obstacles, walls, other transmitters, and the proximity, etc. As you can see down here as well, we do have a DC 5 volt. This is a USB-C. I loved seeing that addition. And then we also have our DC input, which is a DC 5 volt, 300 milliamp minimum. So you can actually power this one of two ways, either with a USB-C connected to a 5 volt or with the included power adapter. I loved seeing those options on this as well. The frequency of this controller is 126 ISM with the ability to channel jump to keep the signal at its highest level. ISM stands for Industrial, Scientific, and Medical. These bands are freed up. They're basically on low-powered devices, manufacturers that don't want to spend money on purchasing a frequency or band. These are free and open for anybody to use. The downside of ISM is that it can become easily congested and noisy when transmitting signals. That's where the included built-in channel jumping comes into play with this box. All right, so let's go ahead and power this on. I decided to power this with a 5-volt USB-C that's coming out of just a very generic power adapter. You can use the included power adapter if you wanted, but I love USB-C, so that's what I plugged in. We're going to go ahead and turn this on. Here's our on switch. And as you can see, we're going to get our transmit and receiver lights are going to be flashing. Also, something you're going to notice here is that your receive right here is at 2.4. However, the very end, as you can see, is constantly switching. This constant switching is part of what I described earlier, channel jumping. This box or transmitter and receiver is actually scanning so quickly through channels to get you the best channel available that it actually looks like it's sporadic or it's not working properly. It's working 100% how it's supposed to with the awesome channel jumping. All right, so let's go over the user interface of this transmitter and receiver. It can get confusing for beginners. However, I promise you it's super easy to figure this out. So right below that, it says P2 here, and that is your power that I described earlier. That is the power rate output option. P1 is minimum and P4 is maximum. So you can broadcast the power of this extremely high or extremely low depending on the distance. Right now it's at 2, so about middle. We have 3 and we have 4. So 4 would be our most powerful output for a signal. And you can, of course, adjust this to however you want, whatever works for you. We also have our, like I described earlier, our 126 channels jumping frequency, and that's self-moving. You don't have to worry about it. It is jumping through a bunch of the open channels right now to get you the best one available with the least amount of congestion. So that is automatic. You don't have to worry about it. I do want to show you guys how to set IDs. So believe it or not, there is a color coding option, which I think is hilarious because it's going to be very hard to remember those unless you have, of course, your user manual or you've memorized it in your head. The ID is this button right here, and right now we're on ID 5, and ID 5 is pink. So on your receiver, you're going to want to set it to pink. And then, of course, on this transmitter, because we're going to use this as a transmitter during my review, the transmitter is going to want to be on the same channel. So it's basically very simple. You're going to want your transmitter on the correct number, and you're going to want your receiver on the correct color. So, for instance, let's just start with 1. So I'm going to go to 1, and don't worry about this A, B, C, D, E. We don't use those generally. They're just other channels or IDs that are open, but we do use 1 through 9. So 1 is going to be blue. So I'm going to set this to 1, and that needs to correspond to blue on my receiver. And my receiver, I'm using this PWTRSS. This is a generic 2.4 GHz wireless receiver. This also needs power, and when we power this on, I'm going to show you. To get this to work, you first need to plug your receiver into the back of your fixture. So a receiver's going to look like this. If you have the other one where there's prongs, that is not going to work because it's going to go into your DMX out. You want the receiver to go into your DMX in. So we're going to plug in our receiver to our DMX in. There we go. And the receiver is going to need a power supply, which they're usually included with. In this case, I have the wall adapter, and you're just going to plug it right into the power port there. Now, we're going to need to plug this into power. So I'm going to plug this into the wall here. So this is going to be what you need to do first. So we have our receiver plugged into our light fixture here. Now we're going to use our transmitter receiver, but we're going to use it as a transmitter since this is already a receiver. So here is our transmitter. Let me go ahead and move this over a little bit. There we go. Now we're going to power this on. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in my USB-C here for power. Now your transmitter is going to need a controller or light console attached to it. So I'm going to go ahead and use Blizzard's socket here. And socket is just a wireless DMX controller that's attached to my Android console. Actually, it's my Android tablet. All right, so if you have this, or if you're going to use a DMX console or controller, you're going to want to plug it into the N because this is our transmitter. So we're going to go ahead and plug this into N. There we go. Now, go ahead and turn this on. Okay, so as you can see, my red light is flashing, which means that this is in transmitter mode, which is what I want. You are going to have to make sure these are both on the same ID. And in order to do that, we're going to need to first come over here to our receiver, and we're going to select a channel. In this case, I want green, so I selected green. So that's all set up. You can select whatever ID you want. I just decided to do green. And green, according to our receiver manual, is ID 2. So you're going to come over here and you're going to make sure this is set to ID 2. If it's not, hit your ID button. Now that is all set up, we can control the light from our DMX console or controller. Again, I'm using Blizzard's Full app on my Android tablet just for this review. Normally I wouldn't, but I didn't feel like dragging out my full desk console. Not for just this basic review. So let's go ahead and connect to Blizzard's Full. There we go. And I'm going to make sure this is patched in here. I have it patched under wireless rechargeable PAR LED. Now let's see if this works. I'm going to bring up red. There it goes. I'm going to bring up our green. There it goes. I'm going to bring up our blue. There it goes. And what if I want to do white as a strobe? Let's go ahead and test it. White strobe. There we go. Now, one of the characteristics of wireless transmitter and receivers is there is going to be a little bit of a delay that you're probably going to notice if you're coming from a DMX cable. So if you're used to cables, you are going to notice a little bit of a delay. I certainly do. It might be less of a delay too if we had this hardwired instead of using Blizzard's wireless controller. But you can hardwire your console to this. You don't need a wireless console or controller to get this to work. So anyways, that's a pretty easy setup. I'm going to give you guys a what if. So what if I want this to be on ID 4, which is blue in this instance? Well, we're just going to come back over here and let me see if I can get this in focus. There we go. We're going to select blue here. So there's our blue. And that is going to be ID 4. So we're going to go ahead and set this to ID 4. Now let's see if I can control this with ID 4. So I'm going to go ahead and try my red. There's our red. And I'm going to go ahead and try our green. There's our green. Try out our blue. There's our blue. Let's do green strobe. There's our green strobe. So again, super easy to use. I personally don't use wireless DMX because I prefer a physical DMX cable because A, latency or lag. B, I don't trust wireless DMX too much right now. It's still kind of under development. C, I also think there's entirely too many 2.4 and 5 gigahertz wireless devices floating around in the air. So I don't really want that interfering with my shows. I need my shows to run flawlessly. So I personally don't use wireless DMX, but I can totally see this being used by traveling DJs who don't want a bunch of wires all over their wires and cables all over their dance floor, or if they're setting up for a wedding and they want to do it quickly and they don't want, again, a bunch of wires and stuff everywhere. This is going to work great for you guys, especially people that are just wanting to get some color washes going, all blue and then all red, stuff like that. This is going to be great for that. This is not going to be great, in my opinion, for stage productions. You're not going to want to rely on this. You're not going to want to rely on this for big performances, but small venues, small nightclubs, perhaps even small churches, traveling DJs, like I said, this is going to be great for you guys. This is not going to be obviously great for professionals, nor would we recommend using this for a professional performance. But I do actually enjoy the fact of not having to run a bunch of cables all over the place. It just makes it look so much neater and cleaner to have wireless DMX going. On that note too, if you want to use this as a receiver instead of a transmitter, because like I said earlier in the review, you can use a bunch of these together. You can actually plug in to your DMX out here. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow this to be a receiver. So you can receive data with this or transmit data with this. So that's something else I love seeing. Very versatile. Also, if you didn't notice here, again, I am using the USB-C power. Love that. I don't like barrel connectors. I don't trust that. I feel like this wouldn't pull out as quickly as this would. So I loved seeing that they included USB-C as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the description down below if you want to purchase one of these. I was not paid by this company to do this review. I wanted to do it for you guys. So if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel at Theatrically Jerry. I do a lot of in-depth reviews on budget-friendly light fixtures, DJ lighting, stage lighting, atmospherics, equipment like this. If stuff like that interests you, go ahead and subscribe to my channel at Theatrically Jerry. And thank you guys for watching.